Hi guys, Andreas here and welcome to another video. Happy New Year to all your smiling faces. I hope you guys have a great 2023. This review is for the TTArtisan's 50mm f2 lens for Sony E-Mount, full frame cameras of course, which they kindly sent over to me for review.
Sell out.
Which I am very thankful for, but just so you guys know, they don't get any input on this video. They didn't give me any direction on what to say. They just said, hey, you want to check out this lens? Review it, post a video, have fun with it, knock yourself out, throw it at the wall, see if it breaks. They didn't say that. We are going to take a look at this lens today. We're going to do a quick unboxing, then I'm going to show you some sample shots and of course test the sharpness and the focus breathing and how durable it is and how good the build quality is, etc, etc, etc. And we may also fire lasers at it. Okay, that's not true. Let's check out the lens, shall we? Alright guys, so this is the TTArtisan 50mm f2 lens. We're going to do a quick little unboxing here. As you can see, I've already opened up the package in which it came. And save for some bubble wrap, this is how it arrived. So right on the top, you get a little envelope here, and they include a nice little lens cloth, which is cool. And you get the box of the lens inside. I'm a big fan of this. It's got a knifeless opening, which I've seen from other companies like Google and stuff before, but yeah, really nice touch on the opening of the box. We have all the documentation right on the top, so a warranty card and an instruction manual. And inside the foam packaging, we have the lens itself wrapped in plastic. And there is the lens itself. Yeah, so really nice lens. It feels way better than I expected for a lens at this price point, to be honest with you. The materials feel really nice, despite the fact that I think it's mostly plastic, if I'm not mistaken. There is no weather sealing on the back, which honestly is fine, no gasket or anything. And I wouldn't expect it at this price point, to be honest with you. It's got a nice screw-on lens cap, which is cool. It's got a very retro lens feel, like when you get those vintage adapted lenses and stuff like that. There you can see the front element with all the markings. It's a 43mm filter thread. And as you can see, there is a aperture ring right on the front. It is clicked without the ability to declick it for all you video shooters. Let me see if I can get the sound of the clicks to actually register on the mic here. So as you can see, they're very faint clicks. They're not very strong at all. Then right below it, you have the focus ring with all the relevant markings. As you can see, the lens does extend and retract as you focus in and out. So that's something to note. One thing that I'm noticing right now, right at the end of the focus throw, so right about here, it doesn't feel like it's touching anything, but it's hard to explain. Let me set up my phone with the microphone right next to the lens to record this, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So I'm not sure how much of an issue this is going to be, to be honest. The lens seems to work fine regardless. But yeah, just definitely something to note that there does seem to be some kind of rubbing or friction on the inside of the focus ring. Aside from that, very smooth focus ring, and the lens feels much better than I expected at this price point, to be honest. The focus ring and the aperture ring are both metallic, not rubberized, so just so you guys know that. For comparison's sake, here it is next to the Sony 24mm f1.4 G Master, which I'm sure a lot of you have either held or had. Either way, it gives you a good size comparison. As for weight, with both caps on, as you can see, it is a svelte 211 grams. And if we take off the rear and the front cap here, it comes in at 191 grams. So not a very heavy lens, easy to carry around. As you can see, it's almost pancake size. So very tiny lens, which is what initially interested me about this specific lens. So let's put it on my A7C and see how it performs, which arguably is the more important piece of the equation. Okay, so here we are in Lightroom now, where we're gonna check out the optical qualities of the lens first. I will show you some sample images of real life shots later. Right now I'm shooting this wall of gearboxes that I've set up, which is a flat plane of focus for the most part, other than the box on the left over here. And we're gonna be taking a look at the camera in aperture priority using the aperture ring of the lens, of course. So the shutter speed will vary from one aperture to the other for the most part. The ISO will always be at 400. The white balance is at 5600 Kelvin set manually. So let's check it out. Now, the first pair of images we have here is the lens at f2 on the left and what I assume is f2.5 on the right. It's the dot between f2 and f2.8 on the aperture ring. And if we zoom into the center here, we see that there's pretty good sharpness in the middle. Better than I expected for a lens of this price point and this size and everything. So yeah, the center is pretty good right from f2, and f2.5 has a very slight improvement as you make your way out to the edge here in the mid frame. So not too bad at all. As we go into the corners, unfortunately, the bottom left corner does exhibit quite a bit of softness, both at f2 and f2.5. And if we go to the top left, we see the same story. You can see it here in the small rig logo. The Godox logo does get a little bit better at f2.5. And the bottom right as well, you can see significant sharpness there. The image kind of falls apart the further you go towards the corner. The other thing to note here is the amount of barrel distortion and vignetting that you see at f2 especially. And that's because the camera does not correct for it. And that's because the lens, of course, as mentioned, does not have electronic connections of any kind to communicate with the camera. And as far as I'm aware, there is no lens profile in Lightroom for these corrections, so you would have to correct them manually. So just keep that in mind as we move along. So now we're going to skip the point between f2.8 and f4 because it's way too similar and you won't see much difference. But the difference between f2.8 and f4 here, as we punch in to the middle at 100%, you do see a slight improvement in sharpness when you go to f4 here, but both look pretty good. I don't think there's any issue with center sharpness on this lens, generally speaking. As we move on to the bottom left corner, we haven't seen a ton of improvement. I was hoping to see a little bit more, especially at f4, but you can see the text on the bottom left here is still quite soft. And in the top left, we do see some improvement at f4, so much better than the bottom left, I would say. Unfortunately, however, the bottom right still looks pretty bad at f4. I was really hoping to see a tad more consistency. It's not surprising, but you know, I was trying to be an optimistic person, what can I tell you? Here we have f5.6 on the left and f8 on the right. Hopefully these will show significant improvements. As we can see in the middle, both are pretty sharp, and I would say f5.6 might be a touch better in the middle. You can see the small writing over here seems to be a little bit sharper. And as we move into the bottom left, which has been a bit of a trouble spot, it is starting to improve, especially at f8. We're seeing a little bit better sharpness now over there. And in the top left corner, it's starting to get really sharp. The issues that we had in the top left are pretty much gone at this point. The bottom right, unfortunately, it's still really soft at f5.6. It does improve at f8. Hopefully we'll see further improvements as we move along here. But yeah, that bottom right corner seems to be a sore spot for this lens for sure. And the top right seems to look okay. So this is f11 and f16. Now, f11 does show quite a bit of sharpness in the middle, which is nice. f16 is starting to soften up due to the effects of diffraction. It is the last f-stop available on the aperture ring. The bottom left now, we're seeing pretty nice sharpness, I would say. So any issues we had there are pretty much gone. Again, with f11 being a tad sharper. In the top left, same story. f11 is very sharp. f16 is softening up a little bit. And in the bottom right, well, this is interesting, isn't it? f11 still has a little bit of softness going on here. And f16 is actually super duper sharp, relatively speaking, of course. So I wonder what's going on here. f16 is softer everywhere else, presumably because of diffraction. I wonder if this means that the lens maybe is slightly decentered. I'm not too sure about that. But yeah, interesting result there. And in the top right, they're both pretty sharp. f11 is a little bit sharper than f16 again. And the last one I'll show you here is wide open at f2 on the left versus f11, which does seem to be the sweet spot for this lens. And if we punch into the middle, you can see that f11 is quite a bit sharper in the center. Although at f2, this lens did surprise me with how sharp it is. It's a pretty good performance there. If we go to the mid frame on the edge, you can see f11 definitely has the edge here. And on the bottom left, again, f11 is significantly sharper there as well. And as we move up to the top left, you can see same story, significant difference for f11. And in the bottom right, well, there's really not much competition here, is there? The bottom right seems to be a weird spot for this lens. I'm not sure what's going on. Another thing to note is that this lens does not come with a lens hood, so keep that in mind if flaring is a big deal to you. Although typically with manual lenses, a little bit of flare when you're shooting into the sun can create a bit of an artistic effect. Now, how does this lens perform in terms of flaring? I'd love to show you, but this lens has arrived during a time when it's the dead of winter where I live, and we haven't seen the sun in like a month. So I'll try and shoot some B-roll of like pointing a flashlight at it or something, and I'll overlay it on top of this. Maybe that'll give you some idea of what the flaring and ghosting looks like, so hopefully that'll be helpful. It's a really tiny lens. It's got a very retro feel to it. I kind of like it. There are a few issues with it, namely corner sharpness isn't the best, but for a 50mm f2 lens at this price point, I don't think that is a deal breaker. I mean, we're talking about 70 bucks US and about 100 bucks Canadian currently, which is really, really cheap. It's one of the cheaper full frame Sony E-Mount lenses you can buy. It's fully manual, of course. One thing I do wish it had that I've seen on some other manual lenses, manual focus lenses that is electronic connection, so that at least it saves the EXIF data. It does not do that, unfortunately. So you will have to do it the old-fashioned way and write it on your hand with permanent marker. So all in all, who is this lens for? Well, if you don't want to spend a ton of money and you want to try out a 50mm prime, or you just want something really tiny and lightweight to carry around and you're okay with manual focus, this lens may be for you because it doesn't cost very much, honestly. And for what you get for the price, it's pretty good. I was happy with it. I don't know how much I'm going to use it because I'm not a big 50mm shooter in general. I either typically like going ultra wide with a 16-35 or more on the telephoto end, 75, 85, that kind of thing. But if you are a 50mm shooter and you want something small, compact, lightweight, pretty well built, and decently sharp in the center, it's not a bad buy. It's not a bad buy at all. It kind of reminds me when I first bought my A6000, small tangent here, Newer was producing a 35mm 1.7, I think it was at the time. And it was like, I don't know, 50 or 60 bucks Canadian. And it was a fully manual lens. And it wasn't the best, but it was tiny and it performed pretty well for its price point. This kind of fits that bill also. Now, who is this lens not for? Well, if you value corner-to-corner sharpness, if you need the autofocus, if you're a video shooter, this lens is not going to be for you because the focus breathing for video makes it basically unusable. But aside from that, for pro work, I don't think it'll fit the bill. It's sharp enough in the center, but I wouldn't say it's razor sharp. But all in all, at 70 bucks US, it's hard to go wrong. I think I can pretty safely recommend it if this is something you're looking for, or if you want a 50mm lens to play around with, go for it. I don't think you'll regret it. I mean, in 2023, it's really hard to buy a bad lens anyway, despite its shortcomings. So yeah, check it out if you want. Link will be in the description below. Thank you again to TTArtisan for sending this out for review. Thanks for watching. Like this video if you liked it, and if you got something out of it, and leave a comment down below if you have any questions about this lens or anything else. My beard, my background, my lights, my microphone, the universe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Take care.